Welcome back to the Mysteria podcast. I'm Marcus Da Silva, and joining me today is one Ms. Joanna Tymkiw. How you doing?
I am so good. How are you? So
Doing
excited to
pretty good.
be here.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice sunny day popping up over here, so I'm having a good time.
Well, we have a thunder and lightning storm going on over here in Ontario, so
That's
the usual.
The lockdown excitement. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I was actually pretty excited because if I don't have to be anywhere, I'm like, let it rain, baby. And then when I do, I'm like, God damn it.
Always the way it goes. So I think because you've done so many things, I think rather than me butcher your introduction, how about you just tell us, give us a little background details on you.
Well, I think Marcus, the problem is that when I talk to you, I zigzagged over my entire life and it's probably pretty confusing, but I'm more than happy to take it away and just kind of start with where I was born and go from there. My name is Joanna Tymkiw. I am the youngest of 5 kids. I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia. And yes, I am a twin, and I just stayed in basically Vancouver my whole life through to university, went to cooking school there. And then after that, I really decided to expand my horizons and really follow my ambition. But yeah, I was very much anchored in Vancouver up until my early to mid 20s. Yeah. And beautiful city, really has come so far since when I was young. I remember growing up, seeing a sign and it said Vancouver population 300,000 people, and me being like, how much is that, Dad? And getting him to try and explain it to me. And now that wouldn't even be
I think it's in the millions now. It's like 2 or 3 million or something.
No, it is. So, but I just feel so lucky to have, been brought up in Vancouver, because it really is the most beautiful city in the world. And I can't believe that I got to grow up there and that I get to go back there all the time. I live in Ottawa now, lived in Toronto for a while, lived in the UK as well. And getting to go back there, I feel really, really privileged. So yeah, that's it. That was kind of like that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where I grew up. But did you want to know about professionally as well?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so went to UBC. I actually went to Point Grey High School with Seth Rogen. He was a year below me. We did a writing class together. We actually made a film together as well. I remember there were hot dogs involved. I don't know.
Sounds about right.
Actually, super bad. The movie was actually based on my high school.
Right.
Yeah. Point Grey, and his production company is called that. So went to UBC afterwards, did my degree in art history. Everybody's like, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I just know I liked it. And I really did enjoy it. So how things go nowadays anyways, it doesn't seem like anybody can get anywhere with a bachelor's anyways. So might as well do something that you like. Really like that. And I remember one summer I was really feeling like shit. I didn't know where my life was going. My dad was like, you need to go see a career counselor. And I was like, I'm going to cooking school, sir. And he was like, well, I'm not paying for it. And I was like, well, I'm getting a student loan and I'm going. And he was like, well, you really need to talk to a career counselor. And I was like, nope, I know what I want to do. I want to work with food. I want to work in the media, and that's what I'm going to do. So went to cooking school, super intense, really hard work, but realize that you don't learn anything until you actually work in real restaurants. And I'm not talking, no shame, love Cactus Club, but not really those kind of bigger box places, places that are franchises or chains or whatever. Like if you actually work in a scratch kitchen, a little bit more bohemian, something like that, the experience is insane. I went into my first day in my apprenticeship at this restaurant. It was one of Vancouver's best restaurants. It was called Aurora. It was tiny, Aurora Bistro. And they just handed me a pig's head.
Cook something.
And they said, do something with it. And it was a test. But I had just been reading about this whole book about animal parts. I actually think I have it up here. It's a book about cooking pig. Oh, I gave it away now because I'm vegan. So vegan now. But yeah, I took it and I put it in a simmering pot with like cloves and onions, and I boiled it down, and ended up making something called head cheese out of it, which is almost like a pate, not a pate, I would say like a pate de campagne, which is like a chunkier pate, but with a lot of almost gelatin in it. And that's from the cartilage. So yeah, I'll never forget that moment where I pulled pulled the braising pig head up and being like, now it's time to take the face off. And I had to do that. I remember thinking, can't go back from this. But I really do. I have such a respect for animals, and that restaurant used the entire portion of the pig. So it really wasn't a wasteful place. It was very, very respectful. Everything was certified humane, organic. We had a personal relationship with farmers. So that was that. But that ended up closing in 2008 due to this huge recession that we were having. And I remember when it closed, I was like, okay, guess it's time to now transition into media. And I ended up looking at Craigslist at the time. Craigslist, this is how far away this was from now, and typing in every variable for like media and food that I could come up with. And then for some reason, like a culinary production coordinator role popped up in Vancouver. My chances of finding out were like so slim unless I punched in those words. And somehow I did. And I got like the one job with somebody that wanted to foray into media, but also had like the background I did. So I just kind of went from there, worked behind the scenes on this cooking show that was filmed in Vancouver. The hosts were actually journalists. After that ended, I went and was inspired to get my master's in journalism because I was like, I want to make media. I want to do this. If no one's going to let me, I'll just do it myself. So I'll get my master's in this. And I ended up doing that in the UK. Spent some time that was in Scotland. And I spent some time in London working for a really popular British food magazine called Delicious. Fantastic experience. And I was just getting all these things under my belt. And then finally, when my master's was over, I came back to Vancouver and I just started pitching out to TV stations, segments and cooking things and and somebody finally picked me up. And it just kind of went like that. I just, one thing after another until I finally got my really big break, which was, I saw it as my huge break. It was just a stepping stone. But for me, I was like, oh my God, producing a cooking show for CBC in Toronto, moved over there, did that. And just slowly started writing more for newspapers, magazines, having regular guest appearances on cooking shows, on daytime shows, cooking guest, just doing all of that. And anytime you picture like somebody who works in food media, which is anything from like food styling or recipe development or like production or being on camera, like I did all of it all the time. That is how I made my living. Very, very, very hard. And yeah, I just kind of ended up being this jack of all trades, food media person that could go on camera and be with Marilyn Denis or Stephen and Chris on CBC and be able to do a cooking segment. But then the next day I would have to work behind the scenes and, maybe do food styling for something. Maybe I was writing an article for somebody. And it all just kind of went from there. So from an art history degree to cooking with Marilyn Denis, it was definitely an evolution, but it was one that I saw so early on. I was like, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. When I was feeling like shit a summer that I didn't know what to do with my life, I was just watching the Food Network. And this was before Instagram or anything, right? Like this was in, the mid 2000s. So it's not like anybody had the ability to go do that. If anybody did that, they were like, how do we do this? And I was just like, I don't know. I just see myself doing it. And I just, one step after another, I was able to do it. But then it came to a point where I was getting married. My husband moved to Ottawa because he's a diplomat, very different career than me. We can talk about that later. And I ended up just stepping back and saying, like, I can't, what habits am I perpetuating? I don't think what I'm doing is right for the environment. I'm questioning using animal products, so on and so forth. So I stepped back and just really needed space to be able to process if I even wanted to be in that industry anymore. Not only because of, I think, the habits it perpetuates, but because at the end of the day, no matter if I was a TV chef or not, I was in show business. And as, you know, Canadian as it was, like I was in show business, and I was like, I don't think I'm built for this, because I'm a highly sensitive person and there's a lot of assholes. Like, so I have so many stories about that, but yeah, step back, put my MSc in journalism to work by becoming a communications advisor, and then slowly step back and started doing segments again, writing, but with more of like a political activist angle. Still do recipe development. It's all plant-based. Just everything that I do has a purpose. It isn't to get me on TV or get me in a magazine. It's to have something that I feel needs to be said that's really important and pertinent and topical to this day and age, said about food, as opposed to just being like, I'll just take whatever I can get. So I think you asked me what I did and I didn't even say it. Now I am a chef, food journalist, and strategic communications advisor at the same time. But my goal one day is to have my own, I have a very teeny little production company that I operate for myself. But my goal is to have a social purpose media company that you know, documentaries, short films, and you know, anything I produce out of there, whether it be writing, everything has the same purpose, which is to like inform, engage, help people to empathize, and you know, give people the information for the changes that we need to see in the world food wise. So whether or not that comes from our actions or just comes from our perspective, whatever that looks like, that's what my goal is to do. So I went on for a while.
No, well, thanks so much for being here. And
whoa,
that's a wrap right there. Perfect. No,
okay, we're done.
But well, there's a lot there. We'll kind of dive into
so much.
But
we need to put a voiceover over that's like, I'm a chef and a food journalist, and now I'm a strategic communications advisor, and this is how I got there. Like, let's do that. We can do a voiceover.
Exactly.
And then people can be like, skip.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, next section. How about well, let me ask you. So we kind of got into this when we chatted the other day, which is always so funny. You know, because I haven't seen you in person
probably in 6 years or so. No, yeah,
maybe more even. You know, so it's been a while. So it's always kind of fun when I do the you know, pre-podcast chats or whatever, and they're pretty much always the same thing. It's like, okay, you know, 15-20 minutes, we'll go over, you know, just kind of build a bit of rapport. It's like 90 minutes later.
No, I can't, but you're just so goddamn likable, and and you know it. Well, you're just so nice and such a great conversationalist. So yeah, I can definitely see it going over. I actually had a conversation with someone, a director, that I was asking about how she runs her own little media business. And she was the shyest person I've ever met in our conversation. You know me, our conversation was there's so much airspace. And I've never had a conversation like that in my life. And I still think I like go to bed thinking about it. And I wake up thinking about it. Oh.
Every once in a while.
So thank God. Thank God you are you.
Yeah, exactly. Works well for this medium, right? So
it absolutely does. Yes.
Now, when so you did your art history degree right after high school. So you're 20. No.
I had no plans right out of high school. Right out of high school, my mom's like, "You're going to be working," and I was like, "I don't know what to do with my life," and she was like, No, no, no. I was the youngest of a bunch of kids, you see, and me and my twin weren't planned. So my parents were like, fuck this. Who are you? Which is how your grandma comes into play, because your grandma was actually like our caregiver growing up. And my mom was like, and my brother also has some disabilities as well. So my parents were like, oh my God, we have twins. What do we do? And so my parents were definitely not helicopter parents. What would I have loved them to be? Oh, absolutely. In retrospect, I probably would have done a lot better in high school. But yeah, no, I actually ended up just working for like a year, and then going to community college, Langara in Vancouver. And then just for the first time in my life, getting really into studying and just being so excited about learning and getting to know my teachers and really caring. And then transferring to UBC, joining a sorority, like doing all of the things that I don't think anybody would have seen for me, because I was like, what's this? What is life? I don't care. My parents were like, they're eventually like, you're just on your own. And I had to figure it out for myself, but I figured that out by working like as a busser at UBC Golf Club, University of British Columbia Golf Club, and just being like, I have to have something better than this. I have to. And which is funny, because then I went to go work in restaurants. And I was like, this can't be it. Media. So yeah, so I had to just do it for myself. So yeah, I was in I graduated. Well, I stalled graduating a little bit, dabbled here and there, but I was 24 when I started cooking school.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was 1 year cooking school?
Yeah, it was 1 year. Yes. And really intense. Like, I don't think it is what anybody imagines it to be. It is, you're at school at 6 a.m. and you have a 5-hour class, and then you have a 1-hour break, and then you have another 5-hour class, and you're on your feet, and you are being critiqued by a chef, and you are just, you're a laborer. That's it. And when people call themselves chefs, like even in their IG profiles, they're like chef. I'm like, no. This is a profession that people do. That would just be like calling myself, I don't know, an accountant. Like, oh, an accountant versus. I'm like, no, people train for this. People work their asses off to be called this, to earn it, to earn the respect. Just like you do with any other profession. So, so yeah, that was a little bit of a learning curve when you're 24 and you're like, I'm going to be on the Food Network and cook. And then a chef is literally yelling down your back. That's not everyone's experience in cooking school. I think in Le Cordon Bleu, or wherever you pay $100,000 to go to a year, they don't do that. But at the Art Institute in Vancouver, yeah, they did that. They were mad at you all the time. All the time.
It is a pretty high, it is a pretty high stress experience. But you learn a lot.
Yeah.
Like you kind of pointed out, maybe not so much on the the practical application side, but just being under stress and having to perform and being on your feet and early mornings, work ethic, all that. You learn
the basics, and everything else, and you just learn how to function, so that when you actually get into a kitchen, you know what's expected of you, and that you don't, when somebody speaks very sternly to you, you're not like, excuse me, you're just like, yes, chef. And then it was, I can't believe that I was in cooking school. It's so odd, but it was just one of the best things I could have ever done. And I'm so glad that I listened to my gut and explored that, because even if it's something that I didn't build a career on, I feel like it's just such a great opportunity to have like an opportunity to work with food and a respect for food, because being able to create something that you're really proud of, or just learning how to use your hands or ingredients, or you just feel so much more in touch with food and where it comes from. So that was my experience. Not speaking for everybody, but that was definitely my experience there. Yeah.
And prior to going into that, were you good at cooking? Like, was that something that you kind of had like a knack for, or was that something you had to build on?
No, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I cannot. And this isn't me being hard on myself. This is me. Oh my God. I just like my recipes that I created. I just can't even imagine. I did this thing and I'm going to tell you it now. And then we can never speak about it again. I did this thing called like hot salad where I took
great already. I mean,
no. I took
well, you can't leave it hanging. So hot salad.
I can't. It took Jolly Green giant frozen vegetables. Got them hot, tossed them with salad dressing, and then tossed it with lettuce, and it was hot salad.
I mean, you know, A for creativity.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
I can't. I think I was even making like instant mashed potatoes, which no shame, but yeah, I was like, I'm gonna work with food for my life, and then I was like, oh my God, hot salad.
Yeah.
Just that was my recipe. I honestly, if I reminded my husband of it now, he'd probably be like, like do a full body shiver. Remember those days that I did cinnamon prawns?
Oh, yeah, that sounds yeah, that's a bit of a lateral move there, seems like, yeah.
So bad. So yeah, that's what I did not have a knack for it at all. I mean, I made really good toast, but that's about it.
Boil water.
You always got to kind of burn it.
Yeah.
And that's about it. So yeah, that was it. I honestly feel like I'm still insecure about my cooking because I always seem to mess something up. But yeah, I always have this imposter syndrome every time I go on a show or something, because I'll have like recipe development and not for hot salad, which is like bottled dressing, frozen veg, and like a head of lettuce. But actual recipe development is a whole industry based on it. And you need to count, have a stopwatch every minute. So that when that gets printed in a magazine, if someone goes and does it exactly how you state it's done, they will get the exact same or the intended result. They're going to get what is in the photo in that magazine. So recipe development is like, it's its own thing. So when I finally go on camera to do a cooking segment, now that we're in lockdown, I do a lot of from my house. So usually when you go on set and you go to do an appearance like on a daytime show or something like that, they have like a food stylist, they have producers. So you do your whole job of developing your recipe, and then you just kind of show up dressed nicely. They do your hair, they do your makeup, and then you go on and everything's all there. They decide kind of, what steps you skip or whatnot. And then you end up just doing it for, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then you leave. But at home, not only do you have to recipe develop, and I'm talking like cooking something 3 times, screwing it up a bunch of times too, but you also have to like set the stage for the whole segment to take place. So my husband's standing in a corner when we're going live with my iPhone, and I'm like, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And, he's following me the whole time. Meanwhile, I'm leaving behind, flipped over bowls and everything. And the way he's following me, it's not showing that he's progressing along with me. So all of that stuff is left behind. And when that iPhone finally gets turned off and the segment is over, and it's done live. So we're zooming right from my kitchen to, 300,000 people. The kitchen is the way it looks. There's like a mini fire happening over here. There's steam over there. There's blood. I don't know. Like there's spilt milk. And then also you've like done a whole bunch of work to lead up to you getting to this recipe in the first place. And every time I get off camera, I'm like, I'm such a fraud. I feel like such a fraud. I'm like, it's just this easy. And then you're like, oh, when the camera turns off and you see literally, it looks like, you know, the apocalypse in your kitchen. And you also know the story that happened beforehand. So it's not like this neat and tidy little thing that you see. And which is like the fun part of when you go to a big studio like CTV's Your Morning or the Marilyn Denis Show or Stephen and Chris on CBC, where you actually go and everything's all neat and tidy and you're done up and you're like, yeah, that's why I did this. Woohoo! Isn't this exciting? Isn't it fun? You're just like, oh, it's just COVID. Like, I love the fact that I can do stuff from my house during COVID. I don't have to travel as much, etc. But then you also miss that piece that is like the little bit of glamour, the little bit of glamour that comes with like the chaos that is recipe testing and development and all the behind the scenes stuff that you see for food media. You get that little bit of like something shiny and new and clean, and it's so fun. And then, you know, at home, it's just like the exact opposite. Then you got to clean the whole thing up and you're on your hands and knees scrubbing. And it's just like, that's what it's like. Like, it's really messy. And it's a lot of work. So yeah, anywho, recipe development is an industry within itself. And the payoff can be big. You can get a lot of sponsors, you can get TV spots, you know, you can appear in major publications. And then at the same time, it's so much behind the scenes, like grunt work that, yeah. So when I was really trying to figure out what I was doing with my life and the industry that I actually wanted to contribute to, I was like, after a segment, after developing another recipe, I was like, is this it? Like, is this it? Am I really going to be putting out like grease fires in my kitchen? And then like for the rest of my life, that's what I'm going to be doing. And yeah, I was like, I got to take a step back. I got to look at what I'm doing and just like get my shit straight, because if I'm chasing this, what's wrong with me? That's what happened.
One of the things that I think is funny with the podcast too is because I got to listen and or watch the stuff, which is, you know, when you're not
horrifying.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah. Well, and it's the thing, because you really do have to, I mean, and everybody's kind of been that, where like you hear playback of yourself and you go, oh my God, do I sound like that? Like, oh, is it terrible?
Anything.
And
it's
so
not until like 1 year later that you're like, yeah, no, that was fine.
Yeah, no, true though, true. And
where you can be objective.
Yeah. And for you being on camera,
Ooh.
You know, how, well, actually we can go down that. Well, you sound like you have something to say, so I'll just pass it over to you.
I made a deal with myself that I'm not allowed to watch anything till 2 or 3 days later.
Good rule.
It was horrible when I first started on pre-recorded. Fantastic. They would edit the crap out of it. I was like, whoa, look at me. And then my first live national appearance happened. Not only did I get trolled for my voice, because it was so high. When I get nervous, it gets really, really high because I can't breathe. I'm basically squealing. But yeah, you're just in that moment where you're so self-critical that nothing good can come of it. And you're not going to learn anything by beating yourself up. And I just noticed that I was in that cycle, and it was really detrimental to my mental health, to my confidence. Now I'm more at like, it happened, it's there, whatever. People usually just think, and you and I were talking about this, how people say to you, how do you do your podcast? Like, how do you just go talk to people like that? You know, and that's just what you do. You just go do it, and then it's done. And you can't, what are you going to do after, right? So that's my philosophy now. But going on live television, and especially with, I mean, you can answer questions really easily, and it can be from a very genuine place. But when you're working with food, things go wrong really quickly. I've done product demos, you know, for big giveaways we were doing for an audience, and you know, the whipped cream didn't come out because they didn't shake it. It was like, you know, kind of like, and just, and then the brands are mad at you. And like, it just kind of spirals out. And I just kind of came to the point where I was like, just don't, because it's not good for you. So overanalyzing something afterwards, I call it like the hangover. When you're hungover and you've done something stupid and you just lie there the next day thinking about how stupid you are.
No, never.
It's me. It's me. It's the hangover, and you've had this spike, and it's the come down, and then your mind just goes wild. So that's my experience with it. It was really bad. I mean, to the point where like my mom used to watch things. I mean, I was in my 30s. My mom used to watch things and she'd be like, you could have done this differently. And I'm like, thanks, late blooming stage mom. Like, seriously. And then I would like lie there all day and think about it. And just, I would just be so, I guess, I would just be so willing to let people's opinions take me someplace, which is why part of the reason why I really needed to back away too, because I was fighting so hard to keep afloat of this thing that made me feel very, very insecure. But it wasn't necessarily that thing that made me feel insecure. It was the way that I was approaching it. You don't have to look at anything the same way somebody else does, but if your approach is affecting you, then you might need to change it so it benefits you. So the objectiveness, I find, is such a gift. Yeah, especially right after, like, especially if you go through oh God, never.
You need some
but
time.
You got to go through it to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you approach the, so you did the one live, how do I want to ask this? So you have your live show. How experienced were you until the live show? Because, live is different. It's a different animal, right? And you kind of pointed that out, but were you, did you feel pretty good kind of going into that, or what was sort of, how'd that all go down?
No, oh my God. So the first time I ever did a live television experience was how long ago was it? Oh God, it was in 2013. So before that, I worked on all pre-recorded shows. So I was behind the scenes for a bunch of them. I had done a ton of commercials, not a ton, a couple. Let's get real here. I'm not an actor, but they'd be like, you get in. And I'd be like, okay. And I was on set anyways. I had done pre-recorded like local stuff, pre-recorded national stuff. So you're nervous heading up to it, but they do their thing. And if you suck, they cut it out. And if you don't, you're in, whatever. So I had a ton of experience doing, before my first live national television cooking demonstration, I'd had a ton of experience doing pre-recorded stuff. But the live stuff, oh my God, it was horrifying. I remember the host, Marilyn Denis, grabbed my hand. I was in this cooking competition on her show, and it lasted, we pre-recorded for a week to get up to the finals, and then I was in the finals. So then it was another week of showing the pre-recorded stuff. And then if we had won certain competitions, we would win a live segment. And I remember she grabbed my hand on the first challenge that I won and walked me over, and it was just the sweat on my hand. It was so hot and so wet. And I was like, sorry, so sorry. And anything that went through my mind was just, what if I swear? What if I do this? What if I drop something? What if I don't say something right? And because I had written before, so when I was producing for CBC, we do these things for, what I was doing was called factual entertainment. So even though it was pre-recorded and somewhat scripted, it's based on something that you use in real life. So it's factual. Or something that you need facts in order to carry out. So when I would write these rundowns, as they're called, for a cooking show, I would put in the recipe in one column, the actions that the host would take in another, walks over to the oven, removes cookie tray, and then what she would say in another column. So they would all be, complementary, and they would all be happening at the same time. And so I would write extra stuff in there. I would say, oh God, even when she was putting like, oh, I don't know. She'd be putting like cayenne pepper on something. And I would write like a cute little thing, like just a little bit of extra blush on there or something like that. Right. But I would write like 10 facts for cayenne pepper. And I was like, well, she can choose whatever she wants from there. But I did that. So that was something that I would hand to her, and she would take overnight and read, and then would come in the next day and film. And she'd choose what she wanted out of those 10 facts, do the action I prescribed, and do the part of the recipe I prescribed. But however, with me, I did the exact same thing, but I was like on live television, but I'm going to say all of the things. So I was like, so all I'm going to do is just put the sweet potatoes in the pan, and then the sweet potatoes in the pan, and they're going to boil in the pan. The sweet potatoes are full of like carotene and and I mean, I lost my shit. It was crazy. I mean, I looked so good. I remember being like, if I'm going to nail anything, it's my look. And I looked, I remember I was like doing live segments every day because I won every challenge. But the talking was just so, there was just so much of it. I couldn't filter what came out of my mouth. I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. I've produced before. I know how to produce segments. I can deliver them. And then when I was delivering them, I just didn't know how to breathe. And it was terrifying. I was like, no, the audience needs to know all of these things. And they didn't. The only thing they need to know is like, how does it taste? Does it smell good? And like, what is this good for? This is great for an after school snack, or if you're on the run, or you just wrap it in tinfoil and eat it while you're in your car. Like, that's what they need to know. They do not need to know, the history of yams, which is what I was trying to give them. So I don't, I got trolled, and rightfully so. Because her high voice, and oh my God, does she talk a lot? And I was like, yeah, but you really need to know why yams are orange. Like, you need to know this. And people were always like, oh my God, will she ever calm down?
It's funny with that though, because it's like with, that comes from experience too. Like, you got to know your audience. And so like the information that you're trying to articulate is actually useful, but not in that setting. No, right? But that, that's what it is. Like the intent
for historians,
the application
for food historians. Yeah, no, you really got to know your audience. And I remember when I was producing for CBC and writing those rundowns, they'd always be like, oh my God, why is your show like 10 pages long? And I was like, because we need to know these things. But literally, the host probably used 25% of what I wrote at best. So it really just was an element of like editing yourself, but also being able to picture something. And I don't think I've ever been able, now I'm really good at being able to picture what something will look like and the steps I need to take in order to get from A to Z really quickly for like a segment. But back then you were still learning. So you're just such an eager beaver and just like, I'm just gonna, write this other thing about cayenne pepper and and what exactly it is and the molecular composition of it and And it's like, no, when you're watching a show on CBC at 3 p.m., you got kids, they're screaming. You want to know how the hell you're going to make the best chicken fingers ever, and then shut the hell up. And that's it. So it really was about, as you said, knowing your audience. And I definitely was just so like the integrity, like in my head, I was like, the integrity of this recipe comes down to the type of cayenne you use. And it was like, no, this woman or man or mother or father doesn't even own it. They're like, this cayenne? Oh yeah, it's from 10 years ago. You want me to still use it? Fine. It has no flavor, but I'm doing it for you because you said something about blush on zucchini. So that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you learn as you go, as you're learning, like with this podcast, right? Like you just learn as you go, but that's the best way because it's so embarrassing at first, but At least you started the process.
Well,
A lot of people don't even do that.
and that's what it is. Like there's a lot of I can't remember that there's a term for it. It's not like uh, performance anxiety. That's something else. But it's
I saw you as a baby.
it's got one of those. It's one of those terms, which is like you can come up with so many reasons to not do something, but just get in there. And once you start, just kind of give yourself enough of a break to figure it out, because that's kind of like what you pointed out, which is like that really being really hypercritical. And it's because it's yourself. What I found is really interesting is the things that you will notice about your own performance, people don't notice. People really don't notice. They might notice other things, but it's like, oh, I was super nervous, like during like that 5-minute part there. And it's like someone else will watch and be like, hey, you look fine. Like, what are you talking about? So it's that separation, right? That objectivity, yeah.
Well, because you can be like, oh my God, did you see my hand shaking? I remember the last segment I did, I have no idea why my hand was like, and it was just a month ago. And on camera, you couldn't see it at all.
Right.
But then if you start asking people about it too, what do you think? They'll be like, oh, that was great. But the recipe kind of looked like cat food. And you're like, well, but I was concerned about my voice, and now I'm concerned about my recipe looking like cat food too. So it's like, fuck it. Who cares? If you do it and you're satisfied with it, and that's the thing. If you've made the mistakes I've made where you've relied on other people's, approval to want to make yourself feel good, how you feel good comes from your inner satisfaction of being able to complete something that you've worked very hard on. I stopped looking for other people's approval very early on because I was like, wow, I'm a woman, I'm bubbly, I'm on camera and I'm cooking, and people are like, what the hell? Like, that's the exact same thing that I used to do when I saw women on television cooking. I used to be like, what are they doing? Da, 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 da. And I was like, oh, I'm putting myself in this domestic sphere. I'm, telling people how to do this with their life. I'm saying, oh my gosh, it's so easy. Can't you even believe it? Da, da, da. And I'm like, well, of course people are going to be like, you idiot. I don't have time to do that. But I'm like, you know what? Then that's okay. It doesn't matter what anybody else says, as long as you are satisfied with the way that you were able to conduct yourself. I always think, like, would my parents be proud? My dad has worked bottom to the top, always fair, never told a lie, none of those things. And I always think back, would he be proud? And I'm like, did I show up? Did I try? Was I honest? Was I kind to people? Yeah. Then none of the rest matters, because it's all intricacies that, like, you might attribute a meaning to, but somebody else might be like, what the hell are you talking about? But then they've got another thing where they saw you making something that looked like cat food. This is a real story. It happened, which is why I keep on bringing it up. Someone was like, but your recipe, that tuna recipe, really looks like cat food. And I'm just like, oh, fuck you. Like, what? Why? Shouldn't have asked. And you just have to be comfortable. And eventually somebody can say something to you and it's literally just going to bounce right off of you. But you have to realize that putting yourself out there is going to give you other people's opinions, but that's just it. It's just people's opinions. And there's nothing more than that. And if I can say that for something as flippant as like food, I think, and food media, and like being on a daytime show, then we can apply it to anything, honestly, because it's everyone is entitled to it, but you don't necessarily have to listen to it. So yeah, but it sucks at first.
Well, and it's a learning curve, right? Because the one thing I've found too is you can be 100%, well, you can never really be perfect, but perfect enough, right? You can put on the most perfect performance. And this is the way I always look at it. The easiest example is sports, because it's pretty cut and dry with a lot of sports, which is like, number of passing yards, completion percent, for football, right? Whatever it may be, still will be criticized by somebody. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how good.
It's unbelievable. These people that are in the bleachers and they're like, I can't believe you didn't do this and do that and do that. That's my thing though with professional sports though. I honestly, it makes me, as much as I do enjoy them, especially hockey, growing up, especially with the Canucks in Vancouver, and when they would, once in a while, like once every 10 years, make it to a playoffs game or something.
Yeah.
And people would be like, I can't believe you did this and I can't believe you did that. And I was like, oh my God, you're acting like as if it's like a cockfight. That if like you're throwing money at a rooster and they're not doing something. And yeah, it just, to me, that whole performance thing and being able to really like, what would you do in that position? Oh wait, you wouldn't do anything in that position because you're sitting here in a seat not doing shit. So and that's what you have to like attribute it to, just people being critical because they have nothing else to do. Like you see always like these beer glugging men with like a rock hard beer belly and they're like, get out there. I'm like, you get out there.
Yeah, that armchair quarterback, right? That's what
exactly
armchair
it.
quarterbacks. It's like,
that's exactly it.
Sit on your ass.
Pisses me off. No, that's exactly it. And those are the kinds of people that that you just need to not listen to. Just don't listen to anybody. Honestly, if you want solid advice, go ask somebody genuinely, but the rest of it, just, constructive criticism, I call it. You want that, you can learn from it, you can take it or you can leave it, but you have to be at a place where you're ready. You're ready. Because sometimes you're like too delicate. Like once you've been trolled on Facebook and like all of those things, and then you've received emails. I remember I had a cooking column and that launched in the Vancouver Sun. I had it for 2 years, and I'll never forget receiving emails from the most random people. And this wasn't because I was linked to online. They would receive the newspaper, look at my very odd last name, which is Tymkiw, receive it, go to a computer, punch in my name, see my website, go to contact, and then write me an email that was like, your story's disgusting. I was like, I told what? I just wrote a story about my sisters and I creeping downstairs, early on Christmas morning while my dad was making pancakes. I have no idea what you're talking about, but it was just like, now I would just delete it. I mean, I'd be very tempted to do something else, but what's that going to do? But now I would just delete it. But back then I would be like, I was like, they find me wherever I go. It wasn't even like on Marilyn Denis where they'd be like, and Joanna Tymkiw cooked this today, and they posted on their Facebook page and people could be like, oh, so annoying. They would like actually go from different medium to find me.
To say bad things.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just is what it is. I understand though also that my audience for certain things was they were a bit critical and pessimistic. And then when I started exploring other options and like really finding my community, whether it's in food media or in activism, like in Stephen and Chris, when I went to Stephen and Chris on CBC, they were, a gay married couple. Their audience was just a little bit more fun. They, there was always music playing, they were dancing. It was just fun. I only got like really positive things and sometimes questions about a recipe or whatnot. But when I also started finding like my activism community, like the one that really suited me, I was just completely embraced. And I would say for the most part, those experiences really help you to pivot. And I remember hearing somebody talking about how they were rejected by their activism community because of something that they brought up. And I was like, that's because they're not your people. Like you'll find your people. You don't have to perform like a dancing monkey or bear because you want them to like you. It means they're not your people. So like it provides you a process of elimination in order to find where you're going to find where you thrive. There's one plot of land and you can't plant your seed there. So maybe there's this other one, and then you will find it. So it does it does help you in the end. I've been able to find such enriching, beautiful relationships because of the stuff that I was shown very early on, you know? And I've also been able to say, I'm not going to deal with this or that. So you starting a podcast when you're this young is actually really good, because you're going to be able to establish boundaries very quickly by putting yourself out there. You know, people are scared to do it, but by learning through that experience, you're going to be able to put down boundaries, or for others, or even for yourself, to say, I don't treat me that way, don't speak to me that way, or you know what, I'll do this, but I won't do that. Like it's very, very helpful. So, I mean, if I could have done what I've done at your age, I think that by the time I got to my age, I'd be like sitting happy, but I still feel like I'm on this roller coaster of learning. But yeah, that's that one thing I said to this girl who was in this group who was feeling very rejected by her activism community. I was like, no, because they're not your people. So it's a good thing to learn. Rejection's really good, really good.
Well, you have to learn, which is, it doesn't, personality differences are pretty apparent when it comes to this topic, but generally speaking, once you get used to, you got to learn to take the emotion out of, particularly the negative stuff, like the kind of shit that you get. You got to take the emotion out of that, because you know what, there are cases where someone is actually saying something that you could use, but
exactly.
they just get wrapped up in such an asshole way that it's hurtful, and that's a simple thing. But being able to kind of take that separately and just kind of
which is why looking at something that you've done after, or reading the feedback on it after you've kind of come out of the cocoon of it. Like after this, I know that I always get high off human interaction, right? So I'm always really excited. And then if something grenades that, I'm like, and I like completely shut down, and it ruins everything. And then I spend the whole night ruminating about it or something. But if you actually look at it, maybe take it in a week later, it might still sting, but objectively you can be like, maybe I actually could have changed that. Or maybe, you know what, they have a point. Or maybe if it's just like something that that is just really frivolous or not useful, then you can dismiss it as well and just kind of get it out of your life, So like just you're like, I can dispose of this one, I can use this, and then this I can consider, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's kind of a little bit off of what we're talking about, but let me kind of, with your, you mentioned activism a bit. Is that relating to veganism?
So food for me. So when I stepped back from doing everything I was doing in my career, and I mean, I was doing everything, anything I'd ever dreamed of, I was doing. And when I stepped back, I was like, I need to figure out what I'm really going to do with this medium of food media. And I just really started researching the implications of our food habits and practices on the planet, on people, on animals. I'd always throw in a cute, like, if you can get your hands on some certified humane meat, like, no. For me, as someone who I am now, it was just learning like what it is. Okay. So I think I'm going to rephrase this. I always think if you're trying to find a way of how to get involved in something, or find like a bigger meaning in life, or a bigger meaning of something that you want to do, what gets your back up? Like when you see something in the news, or you read something in a magazine or the newspaper or whatever, see it even online, like what gets your back up? And for me, it was always food related, obviously, because that's what I'm interested in. It was always animal related, or it was like socially related in terms of like food being food discrepancies between like social classes. So I was able to find my my calling related to I would say the discrepancies in society related to food. So in terms of veganism, I don't think everybody can be a vegan. I think that there can be a lot of harmful rhetoric around that as well. Not everybody can choose what they eat. You know, if we have this, if you eat meat, you're a bad person. There's people that go to food banks that don't have a choice in what they eat. You know, there's so much. There's so many, but that also goes for like lifestyle advertising too, right? People can be like, oh, if you don't get this new Gwyneth Paltrow cleanse, you're a piece of shit. You know, it's like,
pretty much. Yeah,
what?
It's true.
What? Or if you don't wear this, you know, you don't wear this coat, you're a loser. It can be very superficial. But my thing is, and this is my saying, and it's been for a few years now, if you have any flexibility in the food that you buy or consume, because food is something we buy and consume every single day, something as simple as a latte or whatever, you have the responsibility to make better choices. And that's where I come from. If you are choosing this, but you have the opportunity to choose this, and I inform you that this is a better decision for a multitude of reasons, please use that and make an informed decision. And because food is such, I mean, we consume it every day. Like I could buy a sweater and wear it for 10 years. I can't buy a bagel and eat it for 10 years, right? Food is something that we have to continually rely on. We have to continually keep tapping resources for it. My activism isn't necessarily for veganism, it's for informed decision making for food, because food is such a huge contributor, especially irresponsibly sourced food, to climate change. I mean, in India right now, we're seeing all these abuses happening with farmers. We see so many discrepancies happening, especially in Canada. In Canada, I don't know if you know, but we have I forget the exact name of it, but it's the Summer Farmers Program or the Foreign Workers Program. And what happens is that we allow people in for summer in order to harvest all of the crops that we have, our huge crops, from like blueberries, strawberries to chickpeas, to whatever you want. And you know, we even see with them the way that they're treated, the way that there's huge injustices. Even with COVID happening, they were made to bunk like 6 people in a room, and ride side by side on a bus with no masks, and to get to their farm every day. It was a really really sad reality of even what happens in Canada in our farming communities. So just become educated. I feel like as a consumer, we have so much power. Our money is the one currency that corporations care about. It's the one thing they care about. They don't give a shit about you or your family or anything you do with their stupid product. They might be like, you can do this for family dinners. It's just marketing, right? No matter where you go, it's just marketing. But if you choose where to put your money, if you can put it in a startup, or you can put it in a small local business, or you can, the way that can mobilize a movement is incredible, because it's a resource as well. So you can take your resource that you have as a consumer and pump it into an industry or a factory or a company or a startup or whatever that you agree with. So that's where my activism lies, in informing people of that, because I absolutely understand that not everybody can be vegan, but I also understand that there are people that out there raising like heritage pork like they were their own kids, you know. And I actually there's this book that I read before I was becoming vegan, and it's called Eating Animals, and it's a really fantastic book. If anybody's considering going plant-based, I would absolutely recommend this. And what he does is he goes through all, he's a journalist. So he goes there very, from like, I'm going to get everybody's point of view. And he talks about people that have gone, he talks to people that have written passages in the book that have gone in and rescued turkeys from these commercial turkey farms. But he also has these huge passages by these turkey farmers who adore their turkeys and who literally are so upset every Thanksgiving when they leave. And he's like, you know, I pay men twice as much to do the job in half the time because I know that those turkeys are going to arrive at that factory and they're not going to be in pain and they're not going to be scared and they're not going to be injured. And, you know, they're not going to know what's happened to them. It's going to be over like that, because if I don't do that, what is the alternative? And the alternative is a horrifying, abusive, exploitative meat industry, right? So, and that's where I lie. I don't consume animal products because 99.9% of the animal products we consume come from horrifying circumstances. But there are that small percentage that are doing it in a way that is so respectful and so and you know, people have been eating animals since the dawn of time. It's just the way that we eat animals now that I disagree with. So that is my activism, just education.
Well, you'll get a kick out of this, which is, well, first thing, that when you're talking about the summer farm,
The summer workers program.
I saw, I actually had no memory of it until it was like a forgotten memory till you just said it. And I remembered there was actually a Vice piece on it 4 years ago, maybe something.
I
like
love Vice.
Been several years now. And because I watched, like I do watch Bill Maher's show pretty frequently, I'd say. And so I'm pretty aware of like the issues in California. Because I think a lot of people are, because that's pretty newsworthy, like as far as, you know, and they're mostly Mexican or from Latin countries, and the conditions
Right.
or, and, you know, there's immigration issue, you know, the whole thing. And it's bad. Like it's bad. It's
Can be very, very, if done right, it can be great, but it can be very, very, very exploitative. And these people need this money so badly. So what are they going to do?
And they take advantage, you know, and they take advantage. And what was, not the people, but the corporate, you know, the
yeah.
Just to clarify that. But and this Vice piece was on, it was about Ontario, and it was pretty much all the problems that are in California, when it comes to the workers and all that, pretty much happening in Ontario. And that to me was like, well, because I had no idea until I saw it. And I was like, God, in Canada, like we do this shit too? Like, come on, you know, like we're supposed to be better, you know, right? It's like,
well, so this is what I found out about Ontario, is that Ontario is so big. I mean, it's so huge. I mean, to get to, from where I live in Ottawa right now, I can drive to Toronto. I'm there in 4.5 hours if I don't stop. That's fine. I'm in Montreal in 2 hours. Great. I'm near some great hubs. Love it. But when you start going out west or up north, I mean, it's just very, very big.
Vast. Yeah.
Huge. And you start noticing that there are these communities that are very, very, very isolated. And that every image that you have of like a town in, you know, in the Southwest of America where people like say things that you shouldn't say and do things you shouldn't say and are like gay marriage, like they exist in Canada. And it is such a hard reality. You're like, no, we're not like this. We're Canadian. And you're like, oh, wait, this is what happens when you have farmland and no one else around. It exists. And not saying that that is the only equation, but when there's a lot of just emphasis on, I would say, the doing and not the expanding, mentally, educationally, that's what happens. And you see it just kind of pass from generation to generation with not a lot of with no interception. And that's what happens, that you have these older, maybe not older generations, but certain families or towns or whatever raised with perspectives that are not challenged because they don't need to be. And when you bring in an immigrant working temporarily that desperately needs this money, do you think they're going to do anything about it? No, they're going to sit down and shut up and do whatever they need to do. And it's not until people actually go in there and expose what's happening until it actually gets seen. What's really interesting though, there's this so it was just passed in Ontario, and then it's also just been tabled for Manitoba, but there's this law called it's called the egg gag law. And it's basically anybody that goes into a farming facility of any sort, it could be often animal, right? To expose like animal abuses and stuff like that. Anywhere, if they go under pretenses that are false, if they interfere with animals that are in transport, even by giving them water, which is what a lot of activists do. Joaquin Phoenix actually does that. Dream man, that they will be charged criminally. And they just passed it last year in Ontario, and they're passing it right now in Manitoba. And what it does is it prevents journalists or activists, because the public doesn't know what the public doesn't know. Unless you bring them this information, they have no idea what's happening. And why would they, right? Because like they're not going to go do it on their own. They got enough stuff to do. But by being able to expose these horrible conditions or inhumane actions, people are able to know, and then they're able to either call for change or direct their money elsewhere. The whole power of being a consumer element in it too. So a lot of animal activists have gone into places under false pretenses, but I wonder if this applies to anywhere that does not involve animals. Like, can we do it? What if we did it from a human rights perspective? I've gone undercover for this summer farmers program. Am I going to be charged as well? Or does it just apply to elements where there are animals involved? I have no idea. That actually brings up a really good point. I'm going to research that because, imagine being like, you just exposed a huge human rights issue, egg gag law, you're going to jail.
Well, I'm going to take a look at that law too. It sounds pretty interesting. Actually, I got to use knowledge for something, right? So
yeah, and there's totally it's really cool actually. Like when you kind of go down the rabbit hole of activism and you see how much people are able to actually mobilize others. It's a fantastic world to be a part of. And you don't have to be an activist that is, on a soapbox every day with like a billboard on you. Like you don't have to be that person, but you can be that person that talks to your friends. You can be that person that shares stuff online and not only performative, that actually does stuff as well. And like donates, actually takes actions and doesn't, the whole thing about activism is you don't need to necessarily talk about it like, oh, this is what I did. You can do what you did, like whether it be like, bringing a person of color to a position that they should have been given and not bragging about it after, or, giving a woman an opportunity that maybe a man might have gotten. It's like, it's doing it that way as well. You don't necessarily have to like scream it from the rooftops. It depends on like if it's actually going to benefit the public or if it's going to benefit you. So that's something to think about as well. I'm learning a lot still. So,
well, it's funny, like when you saying that, I had a conversation like earlier in the week, and anyway, she's in the UK, so she's at university still, so from same university I went to, and they had a kind of like I actually don't even really know if it was like a rally or it's kind of something like that, with because there's been a fair bit of violence against women, kind of that's been very newsworthy.
in the UK, Yeah,
Yeah.
there was
So
that girl that was murdered on her walk home.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible. So, and the nice thing, I have good friends, so we talk about lots of interesting stuff. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we discussed was exactly what you just said, which is I don't really have the personality for, and not that there's anything wrong. I mean, the soapbox thing kind of gets it's a negative connotation to that, but the premise being, you're kind of a little more vocal, or you'll go to your social media, and that's great, whatever, no problems there. Not my thing. I just not in me to do. But
Yeah.
what I said to her was, there's more than one ways to skin a cat, which is, you know, good analogy for this purpose, which is, that,
Excuse me?
yeah, you know,
What?
but the point being is, my approach is, and with on the MCDP7 episode, I think it's 1 or 2 ago from this one with Vincent, we talked heavily about this, which is, and that was through the lens of the Marines, but the lesson applies everywhere, which is, you lead always. You're always in a leadership position. When you interact with people, you're in a leadership position, and they are too. Gets a little different than when you can get into like formal leadership roles, right? That's separate. But generally speaking, people are always looking at you, and you're always looking to others, which means
Wow.
that you're a leader. And if that's the case, people are going to pay attention to what you're doing. So
Right.
my approach is, I'm just going to do what I do, and okay, maybe I'll tell you about it, maybe I won't. But the point is that I'm doing that. And like how you say, you can get out there and be vocal about that. That's great. But you can also just do it. You can just do it.
Yeah.
People will notice. It starts, maybe it starts at home, and then it's a few friends, and then it's the friend who lives across the country, friend across the world, right? Like, the ripple effect, I think, doesn't get acknowledged as much as it should. I really think.
Okay. No, I mean, I agree with this so much. And I have this, and I have a story. So I talked to you earlier this week about my first experience on the app Clubhouse, and how I was speaking on a panel there, and how it all went down in flames.
I mean, that's
There are all
totally
these,
shocking that would happen.
it all went down in flames. As my friend said, it's Twitter with mics on. It all went down in flames. And there was this woman on there who I really like. But this person really, really challenged her. And this person came on there for a fight. I mean, they were a dick.
You can always tell.
Like, yeah, they were. I was just, and I saw her in another room actually yesterday, and I was like, "Shut up, Sarah! I know what you're here for. You're here for a fight." But so she really challenged this woman that I know, who is an author and editor in public eye all the time, right? And she was like, I'm the person that was challenging her, Sarah, was like, I'm this, I'm that, what you're saying offends me, da da da. Why are you on here doing this? Da, 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 da. And this affected this woman and this woman was like, oh, but I do all of these things, and I do all of these things, and I'm here like reading facts about this, and this issue, and da 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 da. But anyways, this really affected the woman that I was on the panel with, so much to the point that I even called her that day and the next day, and she was really upset. She was crying about it, and I was like, "You're an author. You have 2 books. You have like 2 degrees. You do all of these things. If you look in her like bio in her LinkedIn, it's like 1 million things. I'm like, check out my website. That hasn't been updated in 6 weeks. She's like on it, and you just kind of come to realize that maybe she's doing it for approval as opposed to something else, and which is, don't get me wrong, I hope activism serves the bigger purpose as a whole, but sometimes people just want to have a reason to talk about something, or like a reason to write about something, or a reason, and it's fine and all, but at the end of the day, if what you're doing is making a difference, or if what you're doing is actually supporting a cause, who gives a shit what Sarah, who came on here looking for a fight, said. I mean, this person, I mean, they are part of one of like the biggest organizations I know that does activism, and they are so affected by this one absolute dick that came on there. And I was like, yeah, get shit-faced tonight, bitch about them to your wife, like do all these things that you want to do today, eat pizza like in your pajamas, eat pizza in your wedding dress, do whatever you want that doesn't make sense. and then like the next day you'll feel hungover and like shit. And then the next day, whatever. But like, I couldn't believe how much it affected her. And I was like, but you do this every day. For what then? Have you never met somebody that said screw you as opposed to, oh my God, you're so great? Like, and I remember somebody reading her bio when we were speaking on this panel and me being like, oh my God, does this ever end? Like, I know, I get it. You know, you're amazing. And then I was like, oh, the contest that you're not absolutely right all the time, or that what you're saying goes undisputed, is a really big problem for you, to the point where it's affected you to your core, to your psyche. And then like, has nobody ever said this to you before? I don't know about you, but the first time I did anything real big, everybody was like, you suck. And I was like, I know, right? Oh my God. So you really have to just look at it as in who you're serving and why you're doing it, as opposed to that one prick in the crowd, because I'm pretty sure there are 20 other people there supporting her. So why does that one person that came there to fight really matter? And even if there isn't somebody supporting you, then as I said before, you're not with your people. So find them, you know, but she's with her people. So that was really perplexing to me. I'm like, whoa. And you know what's funny? This kind of goes full circle as into why, like, I stepped back from food media in the first place. I was like, oh, I'm waiting on your opinion of me to be able to do what I want with my life. That's not going to work for me, you know? And that's the thing about being in the public forum. And that's why you see all these people that are so insecure, or that are always on social media proclaiming what they're doing, you know, next. And it's because they need that. So what's the point? The only person that you need to actually satisfy is yourself and the people around you that you love. Like, if you actually very much value their opinion and you think that they're right and live their life with dignity, then call on them. But if not, oh my God, it's just noise. So that was a really interesting experience to say, well, I thought you were here as from an activist point of view. Why is this hurting your ego so much?
Yeah.
And then I realized that maybe it's not, maybe it's for something else. So
kind of backtracking a touch, but with the talking about, and I like, you know, it's funny when it comes to activism, just in general, like no matter what it is. I don't want to get too much down this one, but it's kind of this is my segue to where I want to go.
Okay.
But, you know, progress is slow too. You know, that's the thing that I think people everything, and I don't know if it's like, to me, it seems generational, just because of we want everything now, quick, fast. You know, Amazon doesn't get our order here in 8 hours. The fuck's this? Like, it's like, oh, can you settle down? Like,
it's,
you know,
so
it's
true.
this immediate, you know, so that's kind of all I want to say about that, which is just like, you know, you have to kind of recognize that things take time, and effective change takes time, you know, because
change management.
Yeah, you can change anything right away, but then the next administration is going to come in and they're going to do the exact opposite. So, you know, let it play out a little bit too, but
you've got to move everything a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit every single day.
And
the change management of it.
You know, I understand there's a dichotomy. You can't be too passive because then nothing gets done. So, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, with
too much of a bureaucrat.
Yeah. With the animal treatment. What I like about what you're saying for kind of your, not really specific, but just kind of the general this view, which is take responsibility to make the best choices that you can. To me, see how you could possibly argue with that, in all honesty. Like,
Well,
you know,
it goes for everything though, honestly. Like
exactly.
you,
That's my point, is just that.
yeah, even just your produce that you buy. Like I used to just buy produce and be like, oh, it doesn't matter, who cares? And then I thought, oh, no, wait. And
Maybe
once you
it
start
does.
making this decision in one part of your life, you'll see you've kind of mastered it. And then it will expand to other parts of your life. That's why making decisions with food is so important, because it's something you do every single day. You know, you don't go to a movie every day, so you can't support a certain director or boycott something. It's like, I'm not going to see that one movie. Oh, who cares? Like, big deal. No one's going to notice. But if you do, I mean, they will. Don't get me wrong. But eventually. But if you start making a small decision every single day with the food products that you put in your body, you will be able to master something really, really quickly. And the thought process that goes into that. So you'll master it very quickly and then be able to expand elsewhere and expand elsewhere and expand elsewhere to like everything that you are consuming, or almost everything. I mean, look, like some stuff tastes really good and we want to treat ourselves once in a while. And my husband does that. He does like the 80-20 thing. He does, 80% like organic, plant-based, local, and the rest he's just like, fuck it. He's
Very
ordering
well.
like Korean fried chicken and doing this. But by changing your consumer habits that way, you're really able to like turn a dial to the world that you want to live in. Because the food that we eat, it's grown somewhere, it's tapped, it's a resource that's been tapped. There's crop rotate, like there's everything. There's potentially pesticides that are used, there's potentially farmers that are abused, there's like all of these things. So, I might think, oh, what does this red pepper make a difference? But by buying that over and over and over again for a year, and I eat red peppers all the time. So maybe I bought it, I made that purchase 200 times in a year. By taking that and putting it towards something that I bought at my local farmer's market from a farmer I've met, to someone that I know or done my research on, who picks their food, if they use pesticides, if they use crop rotation, anything like that, that leads to like still having fertile soil so that we don't have to, go knock down more woods to make room for more fields. Like there's like, you kind of understand how it's this domino effect, and it's really, really interesting to see how that plays out. Because once you're able to do that with something as instinctive as food, you can apply it anywhere in your life. So once I was able to do that with food, I was able to look at the clothes I was wearing and what does this contribute to? Will it last a really long time? Were animals or people harmed in this? Were the chemicals released into our water systems because this is a really bright color? Like, what is that? Do I do it with everything? Absolutely not. No. Do I do it with the majority of things I consume now? Yes. But that took years. And it is the most fulfilling thing I have ever done. And being able to tell someone, they're like, oh, I'm considering this. And you're like, well, maybe look at this. Like it's the same price range or maybe a little bit more expensive, but it will last you 2 more years, or it will do like, you'll start to see it fan out. And that is the most satisfying thing, to know that the money that you've spent so long earning can actually go to somebody else that's doing it in the same honest way, as opposed to just going up the chain and filling some of these pockets that might just only have profit on their mind. And profit's a good thing. Like we need economies, we need markets, but are there more responsible ones? Yes. Is there as much profit to be made? No, but does everybody else live as a better life? Yeah. So yeah. Well, that's my thought on it.
And not to, guilt people for, because I think you said that earlier too, which is like if you're not doing exactly what we do, we're going to pretty much crucify you. And it's like, I think about and okay, do I think, or do I research where the food that I eat in a day comes from? No, I have to tell you right now, haven't done that.
Yeah.
Haven't done it. But I'm doing 30 million other things. And it's like, if you were doing what I was doing, you wouldn't have the time to do that either. So now, do I want to? Yeah, but it's just a matter of, at least it's on your radar now. And, but I do that with other things. I maybe think about things from a consumer's perspective of, whether it's, I don't know. I can't really think of it easy.
But clothes too,
is a good one. Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Or even like the electronics that you're using right now. This is what I say to people that are interested in it. Just choose one thing.
Yeah.
What is the main thing you eat? Do you pour yourself 3 cups of coffee a day? Look at the coffee that you buy. Look at how to buy responsible coffee. End it there.
And there's a lot of information on that too. Lately, it seems
so much.
That's
because it's such a hugely exploitative industry. Yeah. Hugely. So, because you have it grown in these areas that there's not a lot of. I mean, like they can also be such hugely remote areas as well, and people are so desperate to work, and like you just have a lot of ability to take advantage of people. And when you're also living in an area where it's like, if I don't do this, my family will die, you're going to do it. Right? So pick one thing. And you know what? Once you've messed with that, maybe a little bit later, you're like, you know what? Maybe this milk I'm putting in my coffee isn't the best thing. Once you start learning, though, about the repercussions, choosing something as simple as coffee, your mind will be like, oh my God, what did I just stumble upon? And it is such a wealth of knowledge, but just choosing one, we pay so much for coffee now, and it is the markup on takeout coffee is huge, so if you're like, oh, I'm going to invest $3 more in getting some beans that are this, what's the point? It's like, well, then you're going to drink your coffee at home, you're going to take it to go. And so yeah, that's my whole point on it. Pick one thing and just focus on it. And then Google at night when you're watching like something on television, you're flipping through your phone, instead of flipping through Instagram, just type it into Google. You're going to kind of get lost in it, and then you'll have the information you need and you're done. And that's it, right? You don't have to like go into a library and take out a million books. Like you can just it's available. So it's so easy. So yeah. And maybe we find out information that's later disproven, but we tried. And like, that's where you're going to get your satisfaction from. Yeah.
Well, and it's so funny, like how do you have time in a day for that? What do you do in a day? Like, do an actual audit of what it is that you do in a day. Because, especially, well, I guess, things are opening up and then shutting down, whatever the hell's going on. But generally speaking, people
don't get too ahead of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. They have a bit of time. They got a bit of time, right? And it's like, well, figure out what you do in a day. And, the 45 minutes that you spend on Instagram, is that really the most effective way to spend 45 minutes just mindlessly scrolling? Like, okay, I like a good meme, as much as the next guy. Well, you don't need 45 minutes for it, And
here's the thing, on Instagram, you'll find it too. Hashtags, search your hashtag tags, fair trade coffee, literally. Like, and that's just it. It's literally right at your fingertips. But it will come. Like, it will come. You have to be ready. You have to be ready. Yeah. And not I mean, believe you me, this time last year, I was like, are you kidding me? I will always have milk. And then I was like, I will not have milk this year. And it's just, but that's just for me. That's what works for me. Not everybody's there and not everybody can do it. And that's just the way it is. Like, we can't have everybody. And this is one of the sayings I like. We can't have 100% of people being perfect. That will never happen, nor is it sustainable, nor is it beneficial to anybody to think that way. But what we can have is a lot of people making little adjustments. And that literally together, when we compound that, it's huge. you like, people might not think a few dollars here and there makes a difference. It really, really does. So for and I always use food as that example. Just pick that one thing that you're like, oh shit, I can't live without that. I need that every day, and just change that. Look at it. And if you're on Instagram, the hashtags. Oh my God, the hashtags. You will go into that. You want to go into a rabbit hole?
Well, be more efficient, right? It's just more, but just be more efficient, because everybody can, me too,
Yeah.
right? Not like I think I'm a hot shot over here. Oh, I'm so good with everything. I waste a lot of time too. We all waste time, There's
Oh
always
my
better
God, me
things that you
too.
can do, and sometimes
Nighttime.
that's fine. That's fine. Just not all the time. Be reasonable. Be reasonable with being lazy too. It's okay.
You know what? But we're all on Netflix all the time, anyways. Just maybe flip to a documentary. Seriously. Well, I mean, I've really gotten on Parks and Recreation lately. I've just watching the entire. I hadn't watched it before, and now I'm watching it, and I'm like, I've spent 3 hours tonight watching Parks and Recreation, and I could have been writing an essay on climate change. And I'm like, you know what though? This is what I need right now. And
that's
it's
cool.
just, we're all human. We have to enjoy life. And my whole thing is, if it impedes on your enjoyment of life, knowledge is power. But if you're doing something that really, really impedes on your enjoyment of life, then maybe activism in another area might be better for you,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, because you can't do good if you don't feel good at all. So, yeah. That's why, I mean, going back to food media with this frame of mind where I'm like, oh, I can't say this, not because I don't want to, but because like physically I can't say it, because to my core, I don't believe it. When I do segments now, I look for sponsors. If I get a sponsor, sometimes I just do segments because I feel like something really needs to be said, or a habit really needs to be shown to an audience or something. But if I look for a sponsor, if I'm like, oh man, I'm doing it, for Halloween, like I did a chocolate bar and like a homemade chocolate bar, I was like, well, chocolate bars that we go out trick-or-treating for are filled with really bad things, from like palm oil. And I'm not talking like bad, like, oh, they're full of sugar, so they're bad for you. I like, don't care about that. I'm like, no, ethically, like they're full of horrible things, like palm oil, really horrible chocolate that has not been produced or extracted in a fair or responsible way, like all of these things. I was like, so why don't, since we have this open space right now for Halloween, because in Ontario, I don't know what it was like in BC, but in Ontario, Halloween was canceled. So like it was canceled. So literally. So I said, well, why don't you just make your own at home instead of putting your money towards, these companies that, use a ton of plastic wrap and that use all of these resources. Why don't you make them at home? And I got this sponsor for a segment that is actually a Canadian cooperative, a Canadian organic fair trade chocolate cooperative that makes the best baking chocolate I've ever had. And I had them sponsor a segment of mine. And that way I can really, and not because I was like, oh, I need the money, I'll just tap them. I'm like, oh, do I agree with their practices? Do I agree with their product? It's the best product I've ever used in chocolate and in baking ever. It's called Camino. It's a cooperative out of Ottawa. They're fantastic. They sell them all across Canada in the baking aisle, and their chocolate bars too. But it really, like, where it aligns with you. So it, it's just a really neat space to be in, where you find those products that you're like, oh, this isn't just something that I buy. I actually have a relationship with it. I've invested my time in it. I really can get behind what they're saying. And then every time you buy it, you're like, oh, I'm paying like $2 extra, but wow, do I ever support them? And it's just like anything else that you do, you want to support. Hey, Kanye West comes out with something and you love him. Hey, you'll pay that extra $100 or whatever because you really like Kanye and you want to support him. Maybe just look at something else like that as well. So that's my philosophy on it. Like, you can really get behind something if you align with it. So yeah.
I like it.
Thanks.
We're bumping the computer. We got a bit of time left, but we're kind of on the back end of it. But
sure.
One of the things I want to ask you, so we talked about some of the the not so good experiences that you've had, but
With
what are
food
some
media?
ones that were really positive, like some that were just really stand out that were enjoyable, or you got
Oh, for
to work with someone that was great, whatever it may be.
so for food media. So when I was in London, and this isn't like a celebrity chef or something, but when I was in London working for Delicious Magazine, I got to go on these photo shoots, and there was this, and I would go do food styling for the photo shoots, and there was this photographer there, and she was so funny, and she was so talented, and she was really intense, and she loved cats. And we remember we went and we shot at her house, and she shot everybody's, like every British person, she shot their books, from Jamie Oliver to Gordon Ramsay. Like, she would be at their homes shooting their books.
So cool.
And I was like, tell me everything you know. And well, there's some things that I can't repeat, but she told me about this time that she was at Gordon Ramsay's house, and so they were kind of putting stuff out and laying stuff around, because when you do food styling for a photo shoot for like a cookbook, like for one of Gordon Ramsay's cookbooks, you have all of your props are food. So you have to make sure that your food can be shot. So when your food needs to be shot, it's going to be cold. It's never hot. Like, you don't shoot a burger and it's hot, it'll dry up really quickly. You have to like shoot a burger when it's cold and it's brushed with oil, and everything needs to look gooey on it, but it in no way is like hot or fresh out of the oven. It's all food styled to look that way. So they were lying all of their props, which were like dishes, plentiful with roasted carrots brushed with oil to make them look like they're hot out of the oven. They were putting it on his pool table.
It's a good use of a
They
full.
were putting it on his pool table to like set it aside for like the next shot, so they could quickly pull it and bring it into like whatever room they were shooting in. And his wife, her name's Tana, she came in and she was like, what the hell? You're putting your props on my pool table, or whatever she did with her accent. I don't know. That was very not like, she's probably very posh, and that was a horrible accent, but that she was just like, oh my God, get your food off of my pool table. And she like just picked it up and like yanked it and put it somewhere else. And I just thought that was really funny. And they were like, yeah, she was really pissed off. I was like, well, no shit. Like, how much does a pool table cost? Like,
Thousands of pounds
in
for
Gordon
there.
Ramsay's house, you were like, I know where we'll put the food props, which are like everything brushed with oil to make it look like it's hot out of the oven, on a pool table. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, they were on platters and like food styles and stuff, and they were just resting the platters there, but still. So she was pissed. But I loved hearing all of those stories. What else? Really just kind of exciting stuff. Nigella Lawson is actually one of my favorite. I actually went and got my master's in journalism because of her, because she was a journalist. And when I was at Delicious magazine, I remember we were going to feature her in one of the issues. Actually, probably have. Anyways, I don't know if you know Nigella. She's right here. She's this sexy little one. Oh, I love her. She's like, Oxford educated, just knows everything about food. And she, I remember the editor had just gotten off a phone call with her and said, what would happen is that at Delicious, we would get these recipes from these chefs. And before we publish them in the magazine, we would have to test them to ensure that everything that we were about to publish in the magazine was exactly as it said. And we would have these little, we would email these chefs representatives and be like, this actually cooked in 12 minutes, not 10. So we'll need to change it to fit the magazine, so that people trust the magazine. And I remember Nigella Lawson was saying to the editor right before she came into a meeting, if you test them, I need you to come to my house and test them, because I need to ensure that you are doing everything as I say in the book. and I just really liked that. I was like, you mean I might go to Nigella's house and be able to test them? So I was like an arm's length away from everything that would have been cool. But yeah, that was really, I just found that really neat because I really got it. I wanted to go to journalism to get my master's in journalism in the UK because I just love UK press and media and UK celebrity chefs. And just being able to be at that little bit of arm's length from them was super exciting. And what other stuff did I think was really, really cool? Like that's the kind of stuff I nerded out on. But there are always things that kind of happen serendipitously that I really liked. I remember Chef Lynn Crawford was a judge on a cooking competition I was on. She's a Food Network Canada chef. She went up and told my dad after he watched something I was in, she was like, your daughter has a really good palate. And he was like, oh. And oh goodness, I know that there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff.
It's always, one of the most you stop recording, it's always like, I got 30 stories, that crap. Yeah.
I remember there's this guy, John Catucci, who hosts this show called You Gotta Eat Here, and it's on Food Network Canada. And I was on a show he was on, and he was just so excited for me. He was like, I know you're going to do really big things. I really I just see, like, you're so great. I just really like you. And then I remember me and my sister were like, and he was leaving the studio as we were leaving as well. He was like, I really like you. I hope the best for you. And I was like, thank you. I like that. And then there's this chef called Curtis Stone, and he's this Australian chef, and he hosts a ton of show on the Food Network, and he's in every single magazine. And I remember I got to go interview him once for a segment I was doing. And he was actually one of the first people I used to just watch him on loop on the Food Network. I would just always turn on. He had the show called Take Home Chef when he was first starting out. I used to watch him on a loop. And then everything just came full circle when the show called me and they were like, we need you to interview him at this fair, and you guys are going to walk around and do fun things. And I couldn't believe it was such a 360 moment, because I said to him, you don't understand. I watched you, and I went to cooking school because of you. And that was just a really nice 360 moment. And he was absolutely lovely. And yeah, he was just lovely. So that was some of the cooler stuff. And then my best experience, though, was when I walked onto the Stephen and Chris set. I remember I was really nervous going into it. The Stephen and Chris set on CBC, which the show isn't on anymore because Chris passed away. And I remember I just walked on and music was playing, and it was such a big show. There was like an audience of like 100 people, and there was like 4 cameras and, a whole set of people. And I just walked on and I felt absolutely so comfortable. And I walked on, and the hosts, Stephen and Chris, who were so sincere, hugged me, and we just had fun. I remember just leaving for the first time, leaving a set and going, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. And the audience was like cheering and clapping. And I love people, right? So the fact that I could actually like make people feel happy at that moment, that was a really surreal time. I'll never forget just leaving there and saying, oh, wow, it was all like, I feel like it all led to this. So that was really nice. Those are really, really, really cool moments that I really like. And my eyes are going everywhere because I keep on reminiscing about that. But those are really, really neat moments that you just think, oh my gosh, I watched all these people, and now they're talking to me, and we're part of a collective. But the thing with food media is, and I think that you could probably say the same for any kind of media circle, basically any kind of specialty circle, is that you'll notice that you'll start to work with the same people over and over and over again. So it starts to end up being quite small. So your chances of running into somebody that's maybe very well known or maybe not well known or whatever, when you're working in a small niche circle like that, they'll really become a lot bigger. So it's neat. If you really want to work somewhere and meet your idols and whatever, like go into the niche because you'll get to it, right?
Well, and you
So
pointed that out too with going to the UK. Like you probably, well, I mean, you don't really know for sure anything, but it's probably fair to say it likely you wouldn't have worked with the people that you would have worked when you were there if you weren't there. You got to be there,
I was like, oh my God, I can go to Nigella Lawson's house. I ended up leaving before my time there ended, before they actually went to her house to do all of the recipes. But I was like, oh, I mean, it could have gone two ways, right? She could have been a real bitch, which I highly doubt, but she probably would have been very specific because they're her recipes. They're her babies, right? Or it could have gone swimmingly, but whatever way it would have been, it just would have been great. I've heard stories. I think we've all heard stories about people meeting their idols and it going tits up. So I'm almost glad that didn't happen. But yeah, she's just such a tremendous example of like good writing and good recipes and like really foundational knowledge of something, not just throwaway, but just really investing her time and energy and strength into learning about a subject and then writing about it. So yeah, that I feel like such a nerd right now. I could have been like anybody else, but yeah, that was it for me. At arm's length, Nigella Lawson, and then everything else.
And all the other good stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of off topic, but I kind of listening to you talk about that, I had a thought.
Yeah.
When it comes to, so my brother's he's a hell of a, well, he's a great cook. He's like legit.
Which one, Jordan or Evan?
Evan.
Oh, Evan. Yeah, okay.
Nothing. I'm kind of in between. I'm more closer to Evan than I am to Jordan on the cooking skill side, but that's a low bar for Jordan. But yeah, he'll appreciate that. But so now that I'm home, I kind of see what everybody else watches on TV and stuff. And when it comes to like the Food Network or Food Channel, like I guess there's like a couple different ones, pretty much like the main hubs or whatever. Then like CBC will do their thing, and
yeah, once in a while, yeah.
But with the one thing that I've noticed, and the person I heard talk about this was Bill Burr on his podcast, because he used to say that he would watch. I can't remember the guy's name. This is about 15 years ago. He's an Italian, but he had a really great cooking show. Do you get a name?
It wasn't Emerald.
I don't think so.
Was it Mario Batali?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Big guy?
I don't know. Okay. Whatever Billy Burr says. But I think it was the Italian guy. And but he said that what he liked about him was that you would actually learn how to cook. And this whole show was how to cook. Now it seems like, and from my observation, it seems to be the case, which is it's all competition style shows. And the only one that I enjoy watching is Bobby Flay, because I love Bobby Flay. And I just like the fact that he like pretty much always beats everybody. So it's great. But it's kind of funny because it's like, well, I want to learn how to cook. And it's like, I don't know what the show is. I don't, you get.
Unless you have a foundational knowledge of cooking, you can't learn.
It's tough.
It's really tough.
And it's like, oh, here's friggin' cow balls, like cook something with that. It's like, what the hell?
It's so wasteful too, because I can tell you, I've done a cooking competition before on television, and I will tell you the judges will take one bite and it will go in the garbage, and it won't go in a compost. It will go in a garbage. So so you get to this point, right, where you see animal products, steaks, butter, milk, everything, anything that you can imagine going in the trash, and you see it. I've seen it. And it's not just one thing. Like, it's not just a scrape, the cast the cast or the crew aren't going to eat something that's been sitting there for 8 hours. Like, nobody eats it. So you have all this food that you cook and then you throw away. And it is so, the amount of the fact that people are starving, the fact that people are, that we're having a huge climate crisis, the fact that food waste is 60% of the food in our country goes in the garbage. Like, and you see that and you just think, holy shit, what world are we living in? And at what point does this commodity step up and go, oh my God, we shouldn't be doing this anymore? But they don't care. And this is what a producer told me last week, a producer I was talking to about my little social impact media company, was like, lowest common denominator, Joanna. Your audience is the lowest common denominator. So anybody that is sitting there going, no, I want this. The reason why they're making that is because they're saying, I know the lowest common denominator, and it's the person that wants this. So then they're making it for them. They don't have to think. They have cheap shots at the guests or the cooks or whatever. They do stuff that's performative. Like, people are like, yeah, but that's what I like to see. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, people leave this show and they go home and they cry and they have no self-esteem. All this food goes into the garbage. This food is as cheap as it comes because, you know, they want to save as much money as possible. So they're buying the cheapest steak, the cheapest, every single thing, everything is as cheap as it comes. So there's no environmental responsibility to it too. So everything that this is perpetuating is horrible. And people are like, no, but I want to watch that. I'm like, yeah, you want to know why? Because that producer's like, I know what this stupid audience wants. They want that. They want that because they're stupid. And that's literally, they're like, no, our audience, no, they don't want that. They don't want an Oscar. They want stupid. And it's true. And this is the rhetoric that comes out of people's mouths when explaining what an audience wants. So it sucks, right? And the thing is that if we started putting, you know, a little bit more information, a little bit more finesse, a little bit more empathy into something, what would happen? Oh, people would turn it off. Well, what else is on? Like, so why don't we make the lowest common denominator something that, you know, actually is beneficial for everybody? Just a little bit, but that's not, they want a quick win. They want a low hanging fruit. They're like, look, we're not here for brain surgery. We're not here for rocket scientists. We're here to make a show that people are going to watch. And that's it. So it's a bit of a problem, but that's why you have to direct your attention elsewhere if you can. Right. Don't get me wrong. I love watching reality television once in a while too, but this is all some people watch.
Yeah.
It's all they watch. They're like, oh, and did you see that person, you know, in the Real Housewives, like throw that table? And did you see this person on the Food Network, like their hair on fire? Ha ha ha. And I'm like, oh my God, we used to read books and play the piano as a way to pass the time. You know, people watched, you know, the rockets and spaceships go to the moon, and now we're like, I know what I'm gonna watch.
What are the
Gordon Ramsay. There's this thing where, like, this meme that Gordon Ramsay off an episode of Hell's Kitchen. He takes two pieces of bread.
Oh yeah,
puts
that's
them
my favorite one.
A girl's face and calls her an idiot sandwich. An idiot sandwich.
I mean, that is one of the funniest things I've ever heard of in my life, you know. But it's like, it's a cooking show. Like, is that?
But it's not.
Is that really the vibe of a cooking competition thing? It's like, yeah, you're a piece of shit. It's like, okay,
they're like, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm horrible. And you're like, oh shit, this is what we've come to. And I want to say that, like, we can all watch that and walk away, you know, thinking that is what it is and it's just a piece of fun, but it's the norm. So then that's a problem.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like, it seems like and you're in the industry, so you'll be able to tell me, but it definitely seems like the last 5 years, just the number of competition, you know, and they're all the same thing. That's the funny thing. Like, every show is the same fundamental thing. It's a different name or it's a twist, but it's the same.
Yeah.
But yeah. And it even seems like the instructional, like, can I find a show on how to cook? It's hard to find. Like, it seems
you gotta, like, pay.
I haven't looked that hard considering, but should I have to look that hard? Like, why is that such a difficult thing to ask? Like on
Well,
networks, I mean, YouTube.
yeah, you have to. Oh yeah, no, you got to like pay extra for it. You got to like go to master class and like actually pay extra for like no BS or whatever. Honestly, love Jamie Oliver though. Like it for me, he's just the best kind of. I mean, there's a lot of talking and there's a lot of hand actions and there's a lot of sudden movements, but but for me but there's always going to be there's always going to be finessing because it at the end of the day it has to be entertainment. So if you actually want to learn how to cook something, you're going to have to pay for it. Like you have to pay for your education, right? So that's it. There's always going to be finesse. Yeah, I know. It's that's actually a very, very, very good point, right? Which is why people which is why it's changed so much, because you found that this was entertaining. And, I just find reality TV, I'm not like, my husband's like, we can't, please don't, please don't put it on.
It's upsetting.
It's so exploitative. It's so exploitative. People have like such huge rates of depression, and then they're like, more reality TV, more social media, and then we just have like the highest rate of depression we've ever had in like the Western world, and people are just so it's just like it's like a serotonin cycle, like a dopamine cycle, where they're like, oh shit, I feel like shit, I just want to keep on putting something else in my brain to entertain me. And it's like the fact that we're laughing at other people's embarrassment. I mean, what are we? But at the same time, I mean, we're all human. I don't know, but we've just been reduced to just such an automatic feed that and this is where I bring it back to actually like doing informed decision making. When you actually take a step back as a consumer or someone, as a viewer or whatever it is that you're consuming, when you take a step back and you say, here are my options, which one am I going to pick and for which reason, being able to do that, being able to like interrupt your neural pathways from being so automatic to doing that, I'm telling you, and I think that we talked about this before earlier in the week, that learning will electrify your brain. So by being able to do that, the confidence that comes from it, when someone asks you a question on a subject, you can answer, well, why do you do this? Well, I do this because of this, and this reason, instead of going, well, I don't know, maybe it's just a better thing to do. Okay, I'll just go back to doing it that way. Like it's the way that it actually like builds the muscle that is your brain it is electrifying. So it's really an opportunity. And I look at when something is so over processed or over prescribed, I look at that really, I can feel so alone and so miserable. But then I'm like, wait, there's an opportunity here to go against the grain, to be a disruptor. And to do that is so liberating. You are like freeing yourself from the shackles. And even if it's just for 5 minutes, who cares? Who cares if no one sees you debating with yourself in front of a mirror? Just do it. And then like see maybe how things change later. So yeah, but where that entertainment factor comes down, no matter what you're watching, if you're watching housewives throwing wine at each other, so sexist. I want to see the real house husbands. This is what I want to see. You know what? They'd be like, well, they just sit around being calm. I'm like, no,
yeah,
get them jacked up on something.
Yeah. It's like
a dart tournament.
Have some fun,
Yeah, get some steroids in there. Do it. Throw some hot girls in. Hey, a fast car. Let's do this. Yeah, let's do that and see what happens. But it's the same denominator for everything, right? It's just entertainment. And it's really liberating to disrupt that. And then to also be able to look at it as just that little piece. Nobody wants you to do that though. They just want you to just keep on consuming it. Mm-hmm. But if you consume it and balance it out with other things, it's just, the balance. When you're not a slave to these things anymore, it's really such a beautiful place to be, even just having the perspective, even if you aren't able to make the choice financially or from a consumer perspective, just having the information so that maybe you can one day aim for that is it's the best feeling. Yeah, it's being human. to the best degree. So highly recommend a little bit of research.
Well, and it'll go a long way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the idea, and
Mhm.
I mean, I say this all the time, which is like, it's amazing how fast, like we're recording this, it's April 30th. And it's like,
I know.
what?
What?
Like, and
It's gonna
when
be
you think
May.
about how fast time goes by, if you make every day 1% better than yesterday,
Mhm.
that's a hell of a lot. And okay, it's never this, it's gonna be, right? Life happens.
Yeah.
For the most part, if you're pushing in that direction,
Yeah.
percent a day adds up quick.
Really quick. And life isn't linear. Like everybody thinks when I tell people about my story and what I was able to do and how I stepped back where I am now, they're like, oh, it just seems like you had this and now you're back. I'm like, no, there's none of this. There's this.
Yeah.
And now I can do whatever I want because I went through all these ups and downs, not only because of the resources available to me now, but because of the perspective that I have now. And how scary would that be to just have everything handed to you and then have something go wrong and then just think your life is over? No, like having a thick skin is probably the best thing that could have come out of having every experience that I've had. But yeah, it really is. There's just so many ups and downs. Yeah, you really just have to ride that out and see and and pivot when you get there, right? Because you might not be able to, you might lose your job one day, but that doesn't have to be your story, and the 1%, just a little tiny bit, maybe just do this extra little bit here, 0.5%. Hey,
Still something.
It's anything. It will give you a little bit of framework to work with so that you can make a different decision, or like it's literally never too late to change your mind, to change your ways. I heard this fantastic quote. It was like, I'd rather be a hypocrite than stay the same person my entire life. And I 100% agree with that, because I'm like, oh my God, I would never do this, I never do that. And I'm like, oh my God, I was an asshole. And you know what? Maybe in 10 years, I'll be like, are you kidding me? I can't believe I said that. But that's what happens when we learn. And I think people are so scared that things are on record now or whatever. Just like throw your hands up and say, look, I'm changing my mind. And that's it. And if the people around you don't respect that or support you, then once again, they're probably not your people. So.
Well, it's interesting that inherent, if you're trying to grow, you think you have to risk being offensive a bit.
Yes.
You
and this is how movements happen.
Yeah. And it's not like crazy. Like you have to have reason, and, there has to be parameters. Mm-hmm. But, in order to kind of go somewhere, you got to kind of, you got to push it a little bit. And, and then if it blows up, back off, reevaluate, try a different way, but you have to, you got to try something. God.
Yeah. And that's how movements happen though, too. Like, I always think, like, what would happen to, America if Abraham Lincoln didn't exist? Like, would somebody else have stepped up and abolished slavery? Like, what would have happened, But there's just, I always think about these pivotal points in history and just like, what would have happened? But, if he wasn't there, somebody else would have, like, eventually, right? Like all of these things that happened in society, if there wasn't this certain movement or that certain movement, like who would, but it all would have accumulated to someone doing something eventually. So at least I hope so. So
and that's
all
why
counts.
We got you in food media.
My God,
that's it,
right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's me.
Gotta start somewhere.
Well, that's me. Well, that's what I hope to do. So I really hope that I can make a big impact. And, all of these things that I learned before, I learned how to pitch segments properly. I learned how to pitch articles. I learned how to do all of these things. I learned that, how to make friends in a very genuine way too, how to create your own community. And now I was like, oh, wait, I can go back and use all of those contacts I have and use those networks I have in order to go on here and say this and go on here to say that. So it's all worth it. Just, it's all worth it in the end.
Well said.
It's all worth it.
Yeah. No, I like it. And
thank you.
Kind of, I think it's probably a good, as my timer died on me, but
it died.
Now that's how you know it's good timing.
It's done.
Kind of to close it out, I guess with COVID, it might be a bit difficult as far as like some of your future projects, because it just might be a bit uncertain. But with any writing, or if there are shows or anything like that, like where can people find you or keep track of what you're up to?
Well, they can find me on my website at www.joannatymkiw.com. That is JoannaTymkiw.com, or Joanna.Tymkiw at Instagram. I usually keep things pretty updated on there on what I'm doing. And I mean, with COVID right now, as soon as things lift in Ontario, I'm going to be filming my my first short film. So that's exciting. I'll keep people updated on that. And you can just Google me. But I have a whole I would say a small portfolio of my work up on my website, so you can read my stuff from my Globe and Mail to my National Observer to my former cooking column to my more recent appearances. That's on there as well. But I think you'll see that things will definitely have more of a pivot to them, which is less Susie Homemaker and more enlightening, hopefully. I
like it. Perfect.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And thank you so much for being here. It's always, I love doing these. So it's just fun to talk to people.
Thank you.
Talk about different things. And it's just a great time. So thank you so much for being here. And we'll be in touch,
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus. I really appreciate it.